Um, I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Mainak Pal, who will be speaking on is Smṛti Pramā or Apramā, a debate in Indian epistemology today. And I have great pleasure in introducing this fine young scholar to you, more so because I feel very proud every time I present him, as he is partially my student. Dr. Mainak Pal teaches at the Department of Philosophy, Jadavpur University, and he has taught in Jhargram Raj College, Government General Degree College at Mejda, and then he joined Presidency University and served there for 7 years. His area of research is theories of perception, Indian epistemology, Indian theories of error, Khatibada, cognitive neuroscience, and philosophy of mind, and he has developed a keen interest in neuroethics and aesthetics. He wrote a fine PhD dissertation on a plausible cognitive model of Nyaya theory of illusion, which is really a fine work and has initiated many discussions, which are kind of interdisciplinary and interdisciplinary. He has published articles and in journals such as Journal of Indian Philosophy, Sophia, JICPR, Indian Philosophical Quarterly, Journal of Foundational Research, Jadavpur Journal of Philosophy, Rabindra Bharati Journal, etc. He has written a fine textbook on Western psychology in Bangla, Paschatya Monovidya, which has come out from Paschim Banga Rajya Pustak Porshad. He has contributed in edited volumes such as Cognition and Experience and Creativity, edited by Manjali and Indruko. And he has also contributed in a fine volume edited by Madhumita Chattopadhyay and Chandragupta on perspectives on education. Without further delay, I welcome Mainak to present his lecture here. I'm a little sorry because I won't be able to attend it completely. I'll join again because, as you know, I have a class in between. Thank you, Mainak. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Sen. Thank you for your kind words. I express my sincere thanks and gratitude to Bhakti Vedanta Research Center and the organizers of this workshop for allowing me to speak in front of you. That, as you know, as Professor Sen has said, that the title of my presentation or the talk is on Smriti or memory. So let us start now the discussion. In Indian epistemology, memory or Smriti has been given importance, but there is a debate whether memory or Smriti is Pramā or not. There are fine arguments provided by different philosophical schools centering on this debate. We shall discuss here several arguments in favor of the motion and also against the motion. So the topic is whether Smriti is Pramā or Apramā. Not only we shall discuss the arguments, also we shall critically analyze from common sense point of view whether those arguments bear in substantial merit. So actually this is going to be not only presentation of certain arguments, rather a critical evaluation of those arguments. And I would actually expect different opinions from this fine audience so that we can go on interacting with each other and go on exploring different facets of those arguments. So I hope that this discussion would be interesting in this way. It's not a presentation of whatever has been said. It is something which is through interaction we can arrive at certain perspective. So let us start the discussion with this notion that memory is a foundational capability which is responsible for other cognitive faculties of a human being. It's a foundational capability. Without memory, except perception, even in the case of perception, it is responsible, but except perception, all the other cognitive categories or other kinds of pramas are also dependent on our memory. Okay. Now the question is whether this memory can be considered as a valid source of knowledge, an acceptable source of veridical cognition. That is the question. It is not that memory is always false. Commonsensically, we can come to this point. Because we can differentiate a true memory from a false one. So there is the possibility of evaluation, cognitive evaluation. And this possibility ensures that all memories are not erroneous, commonsensically. So there is true recollection. I would rather translate it smriti as recollection. There are true recollections as well as false recollection. So when it is true, when memory becomes true, when it successfully represents whatever was correctly perceived previously or correctly known previously, whether the original cognition is false. If the original cognition is false, then memory also will be false. But as a consequence of a true cognition, if I correctly represent the facts at a later point of time, then the memory is true. And if it is not, then it is false. So if it successfully represents the fact that has been correctly perceived or known in a previous occasion, then it is correct. Otherwise, it is false. Now, in this process of recollecting things, there are several points. Number one, in order to be correct, the previous cognition must have to be correct. It has to be stored in a correct process and or encoded in our memory trace in a correct process so that there is no deformity. After that, it should be decoded. The information should be decoded in a correct manner. If all these steps are, all these steps are followed in a correct manner, as a result, a true recollection will be produced. Okay, this is very commonsensical. And if there is any defect or any fault in any of these steps, the result as a consequence, the memory will be false. Now, what is Pramā and what is Apramā? The topic was whether memory is Pramā or Apramā, not that whether it is true or false. Because most of the philosophers, most of the Indian philosophical schools have admitted that memory can be true. It can be yathartha. Some other has said that it is always ayathartha. I will come to that point. But most of the Indian philosophers, Indian masters of different schools have said that yes, it can be yathartha. Memory can be yathartha. But the Nyayikas and some other philosophers have said that even if it is yathartha, it is not a prama. So being yathartha does not guarantee that it will be a prama. So there is a difference between yathartha jnana and being prama. So we have to know first what is designated by the term prama. So prama cannot be, prama may not be yathartha jnana. And another point is that memory is not prama, not because it is fallible. Memory may be fallible. Memory may be false. Recollection may be false. We can, in any point of time, we can misremember anything or cannot remember things truly. But that fallibility of memory does not, this is not the point. The fallibility of memory is not a point for which we can say that it is aprama, because even perception is fallible. The possibility of perceptual error does not, is not a cause so that we can say that pratyakha is, aprama. Pratyakha has been categorized under prama. Although there is possibility of perceptual error. So there is possibility of false recollection, but that should not be the criteria for calling it aprama. Just as the possibility of perceptual error does not guarantee that it is a prama, does not guarantee that it is aprama, it is a prama. I should reinstate the whole thing. The point is, the fallibility of memory is not a reason for holding it aprama. Just as the fallibility of, even if there is fallibility of perception, because there is perceptual error, illusion, the possibility of illusion is there, but that does not make us to say that perception is aprama. So the possibility of false recollection does not make us, or should not make us to say that it is aprama. Is the point clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So fallibility is not the point. So there must be some other criteria, that criteria of prama that is not being fulfilled by memory, and that is why memory is called aprama. Okay. I am not saying that memory is aprama. Some philosophers say that it is aprama. Some others say that, hold that it is prama. So we are actually entering into the debate. According to some Nyayikas, it is said that prama is yathartha jnana. Others say that it is yathartha anubhav. Now, what is prama? From the terminology prama, it is prokrishta mana, the cognition which is best, or the cognition which is excellent. That is called prama. Now, what is the excellence of that prama? That we should discuss. The excellence may be being true. That is excellence of a cognition, that the cognition is true. So one may say that yathartha jnana is prama. The true cognition is prama, is true cognition. Now, if true cognition is prama and smriti or memory is believed to be true, then true recollection should be prama. Okay. So, in order to avoid this, predicament, some Nyayikas have said that no, we will not say that Yathartha Jnana is Prama. We will say Yathartha Anubhava is Prama. Yathartha Anubhava is, or true apprehension is Prama. Prama is true apprehension, not true cognition. Because sometimes memory can be true and it is a cognition. Memory is a cognition, but it is not Anubhava, it is not apprehension. So if I say that true apprehension is Prama, since memory is not an apprehension, it is naturally is discarded out of the domain of Prama. Okay. So, Anubhava is of two types, Yathartha Anubhava or Yathartha Anubhava. And cognition or Jnana is of two types, that is Smṛti and Anubhava. Smṛti is out of the domain of Prama because it is out of the domain of being Anubhava. So this is one of the reason, one of the perspective that has been given by some Nyayikas, specifically the Nava-Nyayikas. But being also a Nava-Nyayika, Gangesha has given a different account. I'll come to that. So let us see how memory is produced. The process is that after having true apprehension, which leaves a memory trace in us, after a certain time when proper, causal accumulation is there to energize that memory trace, then memory is being produced. The recollection is produced in us, in self. Now, the person who has the previous apprehension, only that person can remember the thing, because memory trace is stored in that particular self who had that previous apprehension. And one cannot remember the thing that has been apprehended by any other person. So, memory is always dependent on previous apprehension. So, this is the another reason of calling it Apramā. The Nyayikas are saying that since memory or recollection is dependent on previous apprehension, so it is not an independent, even if it is true cognition, but it is not an independent true cognition, or it does not have any independence with respect to the manifestation of its object. So, even if it is true cognition, memory is not Prama because it does not have independence. It is dependent on the previous apprehension. And whatever has been apprehended previously is recollected afterwards, and the content of memory cannot surpass the content of previous apprehension. So it is wholly dependent on the previous apprehension. It is nothing but a repetition of previous apprehension. Hence, it cannot be admitted as a separate Pramā. It's Pramā, and its source cannot be admitted as a separate valid source of knowledge. But commonsensically, in our day-to-day life, we see that a cognition is considered to be Pramā if it helps us in our daily life and produces successful volition. Even the Nyayikas have given this criteria of deciding whether a cognition is proma or not. If the cognition is safala pravritti janako, then it is proma. Depending on our memory, in many times we have this successful volition. So it should be conferred the status of proma from that perspective. But if memory is given this status of proma, and if the source of memory, that is sanskara, memory trace, is considered to be pramana, as a separate and independent pramana, then it is a fifth kind of pramana, and the Nyayikas will not accept the fifth kind of pramana because they are chatush pramanavadi. Gautama has declared that there are only 4 kinds of valid source of knowledge or valid instrument of veridical cognition. And all the Indian schools, Indian philosophical schools, are very particular about these things. They do not want to deviate from these foundational aphorisms, foundational tenets. Those are actually the essential characteristics of their philosophical stand. So they will stick to that. So according to the Nyayikas, memory can never be a valid source of knowledge. It is not, it cannot be accepted as proma, and the source, corresponding source, should not be admitted as a valid source of knowledge. Now the question is, if memory is true, but it is not prakrishtamana, it is not excellent, then in which way we can say that it is nikrishto from the other kinds of prama? Nyayikas have given different, and different Nyaya masters have given different criteria for considering why memory is not prakrishto. One criteria is, I have just stated, that it is a repetition of the purvanubhava. It is repetition. That is why it is under the subjugation of the previous purvanubhava, previous apprehension. That is why it is nikrishta from anubhava. That is a criteria. Let us see what others have said. What are the criteria for considering a cognition as proma? One criteria or true. What is the criteria of being true? In Western philosophy, we see that there are 3. In commonsensically, everyone knows that 3 different criteria are there. One is correspondence, and the other is coherence, and the other is the pragmatic, pragmatic consideration. If my cognition corresponds to the fact, then my cognition is true. If my cognition is in coherence with the other cognitions, then the possibility is that my cognition will be true. If my cognition is safala pravritti janaka, or it has practical usability, then we should consider the cognition as true. So there are these 3 different perspectives, and in Indian philosophy also we see reflections of these different perspectives that is coming out of their theoretical structure. Now, the Nyayika's theory, the Nyaya theory, comes not exactly, but comes closer to correspondence theory. There are debates regarding this, but for this, to start the discussion, let us say that tadvati tatprakarako anubhava yathartha. So if I know an object X as X, really it is X, and I know it as X, then there is some kind of correspondence between the fact and the knowledge. So it is true. Some others say that no, if specifically the Vedantins would say that if a cognition, and this is also admitted in Nyaya system also, if a cognition is contradicted by a later cognition, then the previous cognition will be false, or any one of them will be false. And if it is corroborated by most of the other cognitions, or it is not contradicted by any posterior cognition, then the previous cognition will be true. So abadhitattva is a sure mark of being true. Abadhitattva, non-contradictedness. Now, the Vedantins, which and the other criteria is that if it has practical usability, safala pravritti janako cognition, the cognition which produces successful volition is a true cognition. But the Vedantins would say that in some cases, even a cognition produces a successful volition, it may not be a true cognition. They have given examples, and these examples are they come under the category of Sangbadi Bhrom. Sangbadi, the Bhrom, that is Sangbadi Pravritti Jana. The example that they give is, suppose there is a jewel and the brilliance of the jewel is coming out of it. Okay. I cannot see the jewel. It is obstructed by some object, but its luster, its brilliance is seen from the distance. Okay. So whatever is seen is not the jewel, but its brilliance. But from distance, I perceive the brilliance as the jewel. Moniprobhake, Moni Bhrome, ami jodi eta bhrom hoy, and if I act accordingly, if I go to collect it, I will find the jewel. So, although the cognition is a false one, I can have successful volition. I can successfully grasp the jewel following the, sign of that Moniprobha, the luster or brilliance of the jewel. So, safala pravritti is not a sure mark of truth, but abadhitattva is the sure mark of truth. So, this is valid criteria. Another example that they give is that sun is revolving around the earth. This is a false cognition, but we led successful life considering that earth is flat, sun is revolving around the earth. So although they produce successful volition, those cognitions are not true. So there are the instances of Sangbadi Bhrom. Taking into consideration of all these things, the Advaita Vedantins have given the definition of Pramā, that anodhigato abadhito artho vishaya jnanatva. That is the definition of Pramatva given in Vedanta Paribhasha, which actually this definition is not the definition of the Advaita Vedantins. Their definition is something else. I'm coming to that. But this is the general perception, general view that that cognition is Pramā, which is about a real object, artho vishaya. The cognition which is abadhito, that which is not contradicted by some other cognition, and which is anodhigato. In order to be a Pramā, the object it should grasp should be a new object, a novel object. This is another criterion for being a Pramā, and I am coming to discuss this point here. This is another criterion. Now see, the object of memory has been grasped previously in my Purvanubhav, in my previous apprehension. But for being a Pramā, we should grasp the object for the first time. And if this is the criteria for being a Pramā, then memory cannot be a Pramā. I am stating it again. If the criteria for being a Pramā is such that the object of Pramā should be novel, then memory cannot be a Pramā, because the object of recollection, object of memory, is not a novel object. It has been grasped previously. It has been grasped by Purvanubhavu, previous apprehension. And the term recollection states that the objects is collected or cognized again. So it's not a novel object. Now, the question is whether this novelty should be considered as a valid criteria for being Pramā. Whether this is logical or not. That is the question. Since there are different opinions about this view, some says that no, novelty should not be considered as a valid criteria for Pramā. If I know an object 100 times it is a cognition, true cognition. And we should not differentiate between the first cognition and the rest of the cognitions depending on this criteria, because from the perspective of cognition, actually there is no difference. All are equal from the perspective of manifestation of object. If the first cognition manifests its object properly, and the second, third, all these cognitions also manifest their objects properly, then there should not be discrimination between the first one and the rest of the cognitions. So some philosophers say that you should not put this criteria as a criteria for being Pramā. Okay. So this is the that is why Dharmaraj Adhorindra in Vedanta Paribhasha, he has given an alternative definition of Pramā where he deleted the term anodhigato. So in order to be a Pramā, its object should not be odhigato previously. Or maybe should not be anodhigato, or may not be anodhigato, may not be a novel object. It may be grasped in a previous apprehension. That also do the thing. The cognition may be Pramā if its object is also already grasped by previous apprehension. Okay. However, Dharmaraja Adhorindra has given okay, I am coming to that point, Dharmaraja Adhorindra's discussion on this anodhigatattva. But let us say that in the Prachina Nyaya, almost all philosophers, all the masters of Prachina Nyaya has admitted that Smṛti is not a Pramā, and they have given different reason for considering it like that. But they have not said that this anodhigatattva should be a criteria. They have given, I will discuss three Nyayikas, Jayanto, Gangesha, and Udayana. And we will discuss that this grihito grahitto, or this novelty, has not been admitted as a criteria by three of them. So I will come to that. But let us, present the opponent views regarding this, whether Smṛti is Pramā or Apramā. Specifically, the Bhakti Vedantins, such as the Vishishtadvaita Vedantin, Venkatanath, he has defined what is Pramā. Pramā is a cognition which is conducive to successful behavior. And if Smriti or memory is conducive to successful behavior, it is Apramā. So true recollection or Jathartha Smriti, according to Venkatanatha, is Pramā because it promotes successful volition or successful behavior. Now, why this behavior is being important here? He is a follower. Venkatanatha is a follower of Ramanuja, and Ramanuja has, you all know that Ramanuja has propounded Shatkativad, where he says that all cognitions are true. And he has given a special kind of metaphysical theory, which we know in the name of Trivrit Karana, where he says that the foundational element of all the things that is there in this world are of three kinds. And these foundational elements, they, by permutation combination, they produce all the things, all these multifarious objects in this world. So in this process of Trivitkaran. So from this perspective, we can say that everything is present in every other thing, although it is present in a meager, in a scanty amount, so that that object cannot be the object of any successful behavior, or it cannot be used successfully. If I perceive silver in shell, this is, according to the other philosophers, it is an example of illusion. But Ramanuja would say that this is a true perception. This is not an illusion. Ultimately, in shell also, silver is present because the same fundamental particles, the same fundamental constituent objects, they constituted silver as well as shell. So silver in a scanty amount is present in shell. Although since it is in scanty, very meager amount, it cannot be used to make an ornament. Okay. So whatever we say about this illusion, error, that is from the perspective of its use. Okay. So that is why use or behavior is being important in order to determine whether a cognition is true or false. From the ultimate point of view, all cognitions are true. So the question of error comes only from the practical purpose, from the perspective of practical purpose. That is why the usability or practical use is being important in the philosophy of Venkatanatha. And that is why he says that Pramā is that cognition which is conducive to successful behavior. From the ultimate point of view, all cognitions are true. And from the practical perspective, behavior, successful behavior is being important. And if true recollection becomes is conducive to successful behavior, then it is true. This is the theory of Venkatanatha. The other Bhakti Vedantins also, such as Madhacharya, Jayatirtha. Even the Jainas have said that Yathartha Smriti, or true recollection, is Prama. They have said that, see, in the case of such as true inference, or true analogy, or true Shabdabodho, in all these three established promas, in the cases of these established promas, we can see they are dependent on memory. See, inference is dependent on Vyapti Jnana, which is the memory of the relation of universal concomitance between Hetu and Shabda. If, now, commonsensically, think it in this way, if memory is Aprama, how can it produce inference which is a Prama? Analogy is dependent on Patidesh Bakartha Smarana. Shabdabodho is dependent on Padoggyana বা পদপদার্থ সম্বন্ধ স্মরণ. So how can these other kinds of proma, established proma, can be considered proma if the cognitions is dependent on memory and memory is aprama? So this is one fine argument given by these Bhakti Vedantins. I'll come to other arguments also, but let us end the previous discussion of grihito grahitto first. Whether novelty should be a criteria for being a proma. If novelty is not a criteria, then there is, good probability that some arguments will be, refuted by these Bhakti Vedantins, or the philosophers who think that true recollection, true memory should be considered as proma. They can have a strong foothold. So let us discuss this novelty criteria. The objection is that if novelty is a criteria of being proma, then persistent perception will be considered as aprama, which commonsensically all admit as being prama. What is persistent perception? Suppose I am staring at a pot for 5 minutes. According to the Nyayikas, cognition is dikkhanasthai. It persists for 2 moments, and at the third moment it is destroyed. So if for a long time I'm constantly staring at a pot, a series of perceptual cognitions will be produced one after another. Okay, this is the theory. Now, the object at the first moment, T1 moment, is the object pot. The same pot is being perceived at T2 moment. So at T2 moment, the pot has become already cognized. So it is not a novel pot anymore. At the second, third, fourth, fifth moment, the pot has become already cognized. It is not a novel object. So in the case of this persistent perception, only at the first moment, the cognition, the perception will be proma, and for the other moments, all the cognitions will be aprama, as it does not qualify the criterion of being novel. Okay, but everyone would say that no, if I perceive it for 10 minutes, for the whole time, I am having true perception, and it is a proma. Common sense does not allow us to say that the other cognitions are aprama and the first cognition is proma. So what is the way out to rescue the thesis that novelty should be a criteria? So we have to say something so that novelty is restored for each moment, so that all the perceptions of different moments can be called Pramā. One way out is that this is suggested by Dharmaraj Adhurindra and others also, Parthasarathi, Misro, Gaga Bhatto, Shaliknath. They said that at T2 moment, when I perceive the pot, I do not perceive the pot per se. I perceive the pot as being qualified by T2 moment. So, at the first moment, the pot was, the object of my perception was pot at first moment. At the second moment, the content, the object my perception is pot at second moment. At the third moment, the object is pot at third moment. So at each moment, the object of my perception does not remain the same. They change over time because moment has become a qualification of the object at each moment. Okay, so at the first moment, I did not perceive pot at second moment. So when I perceive pot at second moment, it is the first time I am perceiving it. At the third moment, the object is the first time that I am perceiving it, and it is pot at third moment. If Hono or Kalo becomes the qualification of the object, then at each moment, the object of my cognition changes and each moment it becomes novel. So, since novelty is restored at each moment, we do not have any problem in considering that the cognitions at each moment are Pramā. So this is the solution that has been offered. But there are objections, counter arguments. One may say that time is, moment, that is a very subtle object. Since it is subtle object, we cannot perceive it. So actually, for all the time, only pot is being perceived. Moment is very subtle object. So for all the moments, only pot is being perceived. Secondly, moment does not have manifest color. Udbhuta rupavatto kaler nei. Udbhuta rupavatto or manifest color is absent in moment because it is subtle. So it is not to be perceived by perceived through vision. When I perceive a pot visually, I cannot perceive visually moment because moment does not have udbhuta rupavatto or manifest color. In order to perceive an object, the object must have udbhuta rupavatto or manifest color. So this suggestion that at each moment the object differs from one from another, this suggestion, this solution does not become acceptable. But some others would say that see, I can have the cognition of an object as being qualified by time. Because often we say, I am perceiving this pot now. I perceived that pot then. Well, now, then, these time pronouns, time reference are regularly become the object of our cognition, then how can you say that time cannot be perceived? Time can be perceived, but it is not visually perceived, but some say that it is perceived by all our sense organs, Sarvendriya Grajya. So, someone may say that yes, the suggestion holds, and suggestion holds, and we can interpret this in this way, that persistent cognition can be called Pramā, since novelty is restored for the object of persistent cognition. But memory is not Pramā, it is Apramā, because evidently its object is already cognized in Purvanubhav. So this is the argument that is given by the masters, the philosophers, who admit that Smṛti is Apramā. But commonsensically, we can say that even if an object is previously perceived, when I know it for the second time, does it become something less? Commonsensically, it is hard to admit such contention. So, in Jayanta Bhatto, let us come now to the account of Jayanta Bhatto. He is giving this account, and he says that no, novelty cannot be a criteria for being Pramā. So, if novelty is not a criteria, then persistent perception will be Pramā, whatever interpretation be taken. And also, memory can be considered as Pramā, because the object of memory, even if it is not novel, it may be true, so it is Pramā. But Jayanta says that no, memory cannot be Pramā. Memory cannot be Pramā, although persistent perception can be Pramā, memory cannot be so. But novelty is not a criterion. Novelty is not the criterion for being a Pramā. There are certain other criteria. Now, what is that? He says that novelty is not a criteria. How does he say? He is actually, Jayanta, the literature that Jayanta has written is very, it has literary value. And he gives different kinds of examples and metaphors. That is, very beautiful examples. He says that suppose you go to a jungle and you see a furious lion, you will be afraid. To the great extent, you will be afraid. Now, second time you go to the jungle, actually, if you, get rid of the lion for the first time, then only you can have the opportunity to go second time. So, if you go second time to the jungle and see the furious lion again, similarly, you will be fearful, afraid. How many times you go to the jungle and see the lion, each time you will be equally afraid. There will not be any less fear in the second time, in the third time. Whatever times you see a garland, sandal, you smell the sandal. How many times you, you smell it, see the garland, see beautiful woman, you will be equally pleased. This happens in the case of cognition also. Okay. How many times, if you see an object truly for the first time and for the second time you see the same object, equally those cognitions will be true. So novelty should not be a criteria for discriminating one cognition from another. But memory cannot be Pramā. Why? Because he says that he says if novelty is a criteria, then persistent cognition and recognition, pratyabhijñā, cannot be considered as true, cannot be considered as Pramā. But persistent cognition, persistent perception also is a Pramā, and pratyabhijñā or recognition is categorized under perception. And perception is a Pramā. So pratyabhijñā also is considered as Pramā. But if novelty is a criteria, then pratyabhijñā should not be a Pramā, because so I am Devodatto. This is that Devodatto. What happens? Oh, the time has come up. So, may I continue, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can have 20 minutes more.
Okay. So, so Jayanto says that if novelty is a criteria, then we have to say that that pratyabhijñā and persistent perception, they will also be Pramā, but they are not Pramā. So it is a fallacy of abhyapti will be there, or we can say that the definition of Pramā will not cover persistent perception and pratyabhijñā. So we should discard this criteria of Pramā, that is, novelty. He says that memory is Apramā because it is anarthaja. This is a new criteria that he is giving. It is anarthaja. Pramā should be arthaja. What is arthaja? Artha, object. Ja means that which is produced from the object. The definition of Smṛti is that Samskar matra jannam jnanam Smṛti. So in order for the production of a recollection, the author, the object is not necessary. Its memory impress or the subconscious impression or the memory trace is sufficient to produce recollection. But in the case of perception, the object should be present in front of the person. Again, Jayanto is giving example. He says that is a very good example. When a person's parents pass away, even after the mortal bodies of them are reduced to ashes, the person can remember her parents. But for a perception, we depend on the object. In the case of the memory of parents, the memory trace or the subconscious impression of parents is sufficient to have that memory. But in the case of perception, the object is necessary. So this is the difference between all the other kinds of Pramā and memory, that memory is anarthaja and the other kinds of Pramā, they are arthaja. Okay. But there is an objection. And the objection is that in the case of inference, sometimes the inference becomes anarthaja. When the inference is done, inferential cognition is being produced, the object of that inference becomes past. Or we can infer about past object or future object. So inference also becomes anarthaja. Now, being anarthaja, if being anarthaja is a criteria for being Apramā, then inference is Apramā. So another example is given. The example is that, suppose there is a river that is coming from uphill. I mean, from hilly area, it is coming down. Now there is a rainfall in the hilly area, the catchment area, hilly area. The rainfall is there. In the plain, rainfall was not there. It was, I mean, sunny day. But people saw that the water level is becoming high in the plain land. So they infer there must have been rainfall in the uphill area. This is an inference. Seeing the water level rising in the plain, I can infer that there was rainfall in the uphill area. Now, when I am doing this inference, the inferential cognition is being produced at this present moment, but at that time, the rain has stopped at the uphill area. But I am inferring about rainfall. Rainfall is a past event. So my inference is unorthojo. So this is an objection, that in the case of inference also, we can have provision to infer about something which is not present at that moment. Second objection against, there is an answer to this objection. The answer is that, Jayanto has given this answer, that no, in the case of inference, we do not only infer the Shadho, we infer Poksho also. Here the Poksho is the river. The river is present, so it is orthojo. But this answer cannot be admitted because, you see, when an object is being qualified by certain qualification, the property of qualification is being imbibed in that object. In the case of this inference, I am inferring Poksho, inferring Shadho as being qualified by Poksho, or inferring Poksho as qualified by Shadho. Any one element, if any one of these elements become a past object, the whole composite will have that qualification of being past object. So this answer is not sufficient. Second objection against Jayanto. Jayanto himself has said that intuitive cognition is true, is a true cognition, is a Pramā. What is intuitive cognition? Intuitive cognition is, suppose, he gives example. He says, suppose in your mind you are thinking that my brother will come tomorrow. Out of the blue, that thing happens. The next day, your brother comes to your home. In this case, when you are having that intuition, the object is a future one. So your intuition cannot possibly be produced by something which is present in front of you. Jayanto would say that no, brother was there. Even he was not in front of me. He was present. The ortho was present. At some another time or place, or another place he was present. So the cognition is orthojo. But he has to then explain how can, from this remote region, brother can directly produce your intuition without taking the help of any memory trace of your brother. And if with the help of memory trace, you can cognize something which is remote object, then in the case of memory also, subconscious impression can produce the memory of something which is not here present. So the status of Pratibhogan and the status of memory becomes equal. So these objections are there against Jayanto's account of orthojo and anorthojo. So this criteria also cannot be accepted with full extent. Although Jayanto in many occasions himself has been creative and novel, but other Naiyayikas such as Gangesho, Mathuranath Tarkobagish, they have rejected his thesis. They have said that even the inference of future object is anarthaja. They have said that alaukika and jogojo pratyaksha, the objects are these are anarthaja. So this Jayanto's suggestion is not accepted by many philosophers. Now let us come to Gangesho's account. Gangesho says he is giving a different kind of definition of Prama. He does not say that Jathartha Anubhava is Prama. He says Jathartha Jnana is Prama. And he says that Smrti is Aprama not because it is not Anubhava, but because it is not Yathartha. But we all know that there are the possibility of true and false cognitions. So true recollections are also there. Then how can it be Ajathartha in all the time? Gangesha says, in all the occasions of Smrti, it is Aprama because it is Ajathartha all the time. How can he say so? He says that in memory, in recollection, we present, in recollection, the time is presented incorrectly. The logic is like that. In all cognition, time becomes an object. In the case of apprehension, we have the cognition like, this is a pot. Idam ghato, ayam ghato. And when we remember it, then it becomes tad ghata, that object. So in the case of Purvanubhava, Vartamana Kalinatva, or the present time, has become a content of your cognition. In the case of memory, Purva Kalinatva, or past time, has become the content of your cognition. So there is a mismatch between the fact and the cognition. Purvanubhava was correct because the object was of the present time, and Vartamana Kalinatva became the was manifested in your cognition. But there is a mismatch with Purvanubhava and Smriti on the question of time. It is a new incorporation. Purva Kalinatva has been entered into the cognition newly, which was not present in the Purvanubhava. So the fact has not been presented accurately in Smriti. That is why, since Kala has not been presented correctly in Smriti, in memory, then memory always is Ajathartha, and that is why it is not Prama. Now, one answer we may give to this account of Gangesha in this way, that actually, if we think deeply, then actually time is not represented inaccurately in memory. It is presented accurately. If in memory we had the cognition as the pot being qualified by Vartaman Kalinatva, then the cognition would be erroneous. Then memory would be false. But here you say, suppose I see a pot at 5:30 AM. At 6:30 AM, I remember it. Okay. In the 5:30 AM, I have the cognition. This is a pot this is a pot as being qualified by present time. At 6:30 AM, I have the memory that was the pot as being qualified by past time. Now see, when I say past time, it refers to 5:30 a.m. So in the case of Purvanubhav, in the case of perception or apprehension, the time represented, the time which was represented was 5:30 a.m., which was now at that moment. And in the case of memory also, at 6:30 a.m., when I say then refers to 5:30 a.m. So the same time has been presented even in Purvanubhava and in memory. And the memory does not claim that the pot is there at the present moment. It always claims that it is an object of past, and really it is an object of past. So fact has not been, manipulated. The fact is there. The whatever was truth has been expressed in memory. So this kind of considerations compels us to think whether memory should be considered as Pramā or not. Udayana has given another criteria for being Pramā. Udayana says that Smṛti is Apramā because object changes. The condition of object changes over time. So at the time of Purvanubhava, the pot was in a certain condition. At the time of memory, at the time of recollection, the pot has changed its conditions. But in the meantime, it might be destroyed. But in memory, whatever was perceived previously is represented. So there is mismatch between fact and cognition. Okay, he gives an example. The example is that suppose at T1 moment, there is an earthen pot, which is the color of it is black. Earthen pot is black. Now I perceive that earthen pot. After some time, when it is baked in fire, it turns into a red pot. Okay. Now when the pot has become red, then without perceiving the red pot, I am remembering the earthen pot. Okay. Or he says, when it turns into red pot, if I have any cognition of earthen pot, then there is a mismatch between earthen pot and red, because factually the pot has become red, but my cognition is of an earthen pot. So there is fact cognition mismatch. The same thing happens in the case of memory. When I remember the black pot, then if the pot has changed its condition, then there is a mismatch. That is why memory is Apramā. But see, we may answer this, refute this account. See, memory does not claim that the object of memory is a present object. It always says that it is that pot. It is an object of a past. And that is a correct representation of fact. Because at past moment, actually it was black. Even if now it has become a red pot, that is not the claim of a memory. That doesn't have anything to do with memory. Memory claims that its object is a past object. It is not a present object. If past object is a black pot, then memory is true. So we can see there are many aspects or many perspectives to analyze these arguments given by the philosophers who admit that whether whoever has entered into this debate whether Smriti is Prama or Aprama. The Bhakti Vedantins have given different arguments. I have mentioned some of them. Different arguments. One has been said that in inference, etc., other pramas, past and future objects, they become the object. So anarthajo, they are also anarthajo. So Smriti, even if it is anarthajo, it may be prama. And he says that Smriti, although it is a repetition, but on the question of origination as well as on the question of manifestation of object, it is independent. Because it is not that the memory function is completely dependent on previous apprehension. It involves certain other faculties. How to perceive is not all important. How to encode it, how to decode it from memory store. These processes also are involved in memory. So it is not that memory depends on only previous apprehension for manifestation of its object. In order to manifest object, memory depends on other faculties also. And if all the processes are correct, then only memory becomes correct. So it has an independent foothold as a cognitive faculty. If memory is yathartha or true, then it is uncontradicted. So why should not we call it a Prama? Perception, even perception. See, in the case of Shabikalpaka Pratyaksha also, we need to have a previous apprehension and memory of its components, because in order to perceive a red flower as red, we need to know previously what red is. Although in Nyaya system, it is said that while perceiving on the spot, we can have the knowledge of the qualification. But in many other cases, if we do not have any previous conception of the object, we cannot categorize the object under any head. So, and in the case of inference, analogy, testimony, I have said that they are dependent on memory. Now, if memory is Aprama, then as a consequence, we must have to say that those established pramas also are Aprama. So these are the arguments given by the Bhakti Vedantins. There are many other things that that are there in this debate, but let us end here. I hope that I have been explicit in, I mean, explaining the things to all of you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Moina. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. I now ask the participants to ask any question they may have. And again, if you want to speak in Bangla, you're most welcome to do so.
ম্যাম আমি একটা করছি, ঠিক আছে? সেটা হচ্ছে যে স্যার যেটা এক্সপ্লেন করেছেন যে মানে মানে এট দ্য বিগিনিং প্রথমেই বলেছেন যে মেমোরি বা স্মৃতি প্রমা বহির্ভূত, কারণ হচ্ছে যে আমাদের যে ডিভিশন হয়েছে নলেজ বা জ্ঞানের যে ডিভিশন হয়েছে, সেই ডিভিশনের মধ্যে আমরা আছি জ্ঞান দুই প্রকার, স্মৃতি অনুভব, অনুভব দুই প্রকার, যথার্থ অযথার্থ। তো স্মৃতিটা অনুভবের মানে ব্রাঞ্চের বাইরে, আউট অফ ডোমেন অফ প্রমা, ঠিক আছে? তো সেহেতু যদি স্মৃতি প্রমা বহির্ভূত হয়, তো হোয়াট অ্যাবাউট নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ? নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ তো অনুভবের একটা পার্ট। অনুভব মিন্স যথার্থ অনুভব, প্রত্যক্ষ, অনুমিতি, উপমিতি, শাব্দবোধ। সো প্রত্যক্ষেরই একটা ডিভিশন হচ্ছে নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ, সবিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ। সো নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ প্রমার ব্রাঞ্চের মধ্যে থেকেও কেন সেটাকে আবার পরে বলা হচ্ছে যে নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ ন প্রমা ন অপ্রমা, মানে এইটার ক্ষেত্রে একটু কি বলবেন স্যার, যদি একটু
হ্যাঁ
এক্সপ্লেন করেন।
হ্যাঁ এটা বলা হয় যে নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ প্রমা অপ্রমা বহির্ভূত। হ্যাঁ, এইটা একটা অন্যভাবে বলা হয়, সেটা হচ্ছে এই যে প্রমার ডেফিনিশনে, দেখো প্রমার ডেফিনিশন আমি তুমিই বলছি। হ্যাঁ
ওকে, ইটস ওকে স্যার।
হ্যাঁ
ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ। হ্যাঁ,
বলছি প্রমার ডেফিনিশনটা দেখো, নৈয়ায়িকরা যেভাবে ডেফিনিশন দিয়েছেন, দেখো সবাই তো একইভাবে ক্যাটেগরাইজেশনটা করেননি। আহ, আহ, তো এইটা আমি তর্ক সংগ্রহ থেকেই বলছি যে প্রমার ডেফিনিশন হচ্ছে তদ্বতী তৎপ্রকারক এবং অপ্রমার ডেফিনিশন তদভাববতী তৎপ্রকারক। হ্যাঁ, এখন নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষে যেহেতু বিশেষণ এবং বিশেষ্য তাদের নিজেদের মধ্যে কানেকশনটা ভাসিতই হয় না, সেহেতু সেটা তদ্বতী তৎপ্রকারক না তদভাববতী তৎপ্রকারক, এই প্রশ্নটাই উঠতে পারে না। এটাকে ডিটারমাইনই করা যায় না এটা প্রমা না অপ্রমা। কেন না, প্রমা এবং অপ্রমাকে আমি প্রকারকত্ব তৎপ্রকারকত্ব টার্মে আমি ডিফাইন করেছি। যেহেতু নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষে বিশিষ্ট বিশেষণের সম্বন্ধটাই থাকে না, সেহেতু এটা আদৌ তৎপ্রকারক না তদভাববৎ তদ্বৎ তৎপ্রকারক বা তদভাববৎ তৎপ্রকারক, এইরকম ভাবে বলাই যায় না। সেই জন্যে এটা হচ্ছে নির্বিকল্পকটাকে প্রমা অপ্রমা বহির্ভূত বলা হচ্ছে। কিন্তু অন্য একটা দিকে দেখো, নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ কেন স্বীকার করা হয়, সেইটার কিন্তু ওরকম তোমার পারসেপচুয়াল এভিডেন্স নেই। বলা হচ্ছে যে এটা একটা অনুমিতি দিয়ে আমি স্বীকার করছি। আমি কিন্তু নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষের অস্তিত্বটাকে, এটা অনুব্যবসায়ও আসে না, অনুব্যবসায়তেও নির্বিকল্প প্রত্যক্ষ আসে না। ফলে নির্বিকল্প প্রত্যক্ষের সপক্ষে কোনো প্রাত্যক্ষিক প্রমাণ নেই। হ্যাঁ,
হুম হুম,
অনুমান দিয়ে আমি এটা বুঝি যে হ্যাঁ কিছু একটা না থাকলে এইটা হয় না।
হয় না।
হ্যাঁ, যে দণ্ডত্বের জ্ঞান না থাকলে দণ্ডের জ্ঞান হয় না।
Yes.
দণ্ডের জ্ঞান যখন হচ্ছে তখন দণ্ডত্বের জ্ঞানটাও ছিল। হ্যাঁ, এবং সেটা ওই তোমার তাদের সম্বন্ধটা ভেসে ওঠেনি, এইভাবেই আমার কোনোভাবে একটা জ্ঞান হয়েছে। কিন্তু এটাকে প্রমার দলেও ফেলা যাচ্ছে না, অপ্রমার দলেও ফেলা যাচ্ছে না। কিন্তু এটা প্রত্যক্ষ এই অর্থে বলা হচ্ছে যে এইটা দেখো অনুমিতিও নয়, উপমিতিও নয়, শাব্দবোধও নয়, তাহলে আর কি হবে, তাহলে প্রত্যক্ষই হবে। এইভাবে এটা বলা হচ্ছে। হ্যাঁ, সুতরাং এই এই টার্মে এই আলোচনাগুলো এরকম আসে। কিন্তু স্মৃতির সঙ্গে নির্বিকল্প প্রত্যক্ষের পার্থক্য হচ্ছে এই, দেখো স্মৃতি কিন্তু সবিকল্পক জ্ঞান। স্মৃতি হলো সবিকল্পক জ্ঞান, এটা নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ নয়, নির্বিকল্পক জ্ঞান এটা নয়। কেন না, দেখো ট্রুথ এবং ফলসিটির কোয়েশ্চেন যেখানেই আসবে, হ্যাঁ, সেখানেই ওই সেটা যথার্থ না অযথার্থ, এই এই টার্মে আমি যখন দেখব, তখন কিন্তু হয় তদ্বতী তৎপ্রকারক বা তদভাববতী তৎপ্রকারক, এই কন্ডিশনগুলো আছে কিনা আমাকে কিন্তু ইভ্যালুয়েট করতে হবে। তাহলে ইভ্যালুয়েশনের পসিবিলিটি কিন্তু তোমার ইয়েতে আছে, স্মৃতির ক্ষেত্রে আছে, সবিকল্প জ্ঞানের ক্ষেত্রে আছে, অনুমিতির ক্ষেত্রে আছে। কিন্তু নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষ যেহেতু প্রমাও নয় অপ্রমাও নয়, হ্যাঁ, সুতরাং এটা বলা মুশকিল যে ইভ্যালুয়েশনের পসিবিলিটি ওখানে কতটা, তার এক্সিস্টেন্সটা আছে এইটুকু, এবং তার ফলে যে সবিকল্পক জ্ঞান উৎপন্ন হচ্ছে তা যদি সত্য হয়, তাহলে নির্বিকল্পক প্রত্যক্ষের সত্যতাটাও সেখান থেকে অনুমিত হয়। এইটা আবার বৌদ্ধরা বলছেন। হুম আহ, সেই ওইখানে একটা তোমার ইয়ে রয়েছে যে প্রত্যক্ষ পৃষ্ঠভাবী জ্ঞান, হ্যাঁ, এইটা থেকে তোমার নির্বিকল্পকের অস্তিত্ব এবং তার ট্রুথ, হ্যাঁ, সেইটা তারা অনুমান করছে। এটা এইভাবে এই আলোচনাগুলো হয়।
তো আমি বলতে চাইছি স্যার যে এই যে নির্বিকল্পক সবিকল্পক, ঠিক আছে, তাহলে
হুম
নির্বিকল্পক সবিকল্পক আমরা এটাকে যখন জ্ঞান বলছি, জ্ঞান অ্যাজ আ নলেজ, অ্যাজ আ কগনিশন,
হুম
তো তখন কি সেটা কি মানে মানে অ্যাজ আ হোল, মানে নলেজ বলতে আমরা যেটাকে বুঝি সর্বব্যবহার হেতুর গুণ বুদ্ধির জ্ঞানম, এইটার মধ্যে কি ইনক্লুড করতে পারি নাকি
না,
সব
পারি
শব্দ
না।
পারি না?
না,
আচ্ছা
তার
আচ্ছা
কারণ ওখানে তর্ক সংগ্রহকার যে সর্বব্যবহার ও হেতুর গুণ বুদ্ধি জ্ঞানম বলছেন, এখানে নির্বিকল্প জ্ঞান যেহেতু কোনো ব্যবহারেরই কারণ নয়, হ্যাঁ, সেহেতু ওই প্রথম অংশটা কিন্তু নির্বিকল্প প্রত্যক্ষের প্রতি লাগবে না। সেই জন্যেই উনি শেষে বলছেন যে বুদ্ধির জ্ঞানম, অর্থাৎ জ্ঞান হলো যা বুদ্ধি তাই জ্ঞান, বা জ্ঞানত্ব বিশিষ্টই জ্ঞান। এই ডেফিনিশনটা নির্বিকল্প প্রত্যক্ষকে কভার করে। কিন্তু যেহেতু সর্বব্যবহার ও হেতুর গুণও এই প্রথম পোর্শনটা নির্বিকল্প প্রত্যক্ষকে কভার করে না, সেই জন্য এটাকে পরিচায়ক বিশেষণ হিসাবেই কিন্তু আমাদের গ্রহণ করতে হবে। এবং এই অব্যাপ্তি হয় বলে সর্বব্যবহার ও হেতুর গুণও এই পোর্শনটা যদি শুধু থাকে, তাহলে তর্ক সংগ্রহকারের প্রদত্ত যে আহ, আহ, জ্ঞানের ডেফিনিশন, সেটা অব্যাপ্তি দোষদুষ্ট হয় বলেই আমি শেষে বলি যে জ্ঞানত্ব বিশিষ্টই জ্ঞান। এই জ্ঞানত্বটা যেমন সবিকল্প জ্ঞানে আছে, তেমন নির্বিকল্প জ্ঞানেও আছে। সুতরাং জ্ঞানত্ব বিশিষ্টই জ্ঞান, এই ডেফিনিশনটাই কিন্তু নির্বিকল্প প্রত্যক্ষকে ধরতে পারে। কিন্তু বাকি প্রথম অংশটা, ওটা নির্বিকল্প প্রত্যক্ষকে ধরতে পারে না বলে একটা অব্যক্তি দোষ হয়।
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার, গট ইট, থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ।
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, think of this example, sir. I am at a mathematical examination, and now I am facing some problems, and at the time of examination, I failed to solve one particular problem. Now, after returning back to my home, while again I am thinking about that problem in my memory, suddenly the process of solving that problem flashed upon in my mind. So here, can I say that using my memory, I am successfully producing new knowledge?
হুম হুম ইউ সি, দেখো সত্যব্রত, আহ, সেটা হচ্ছে এটা 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 একটু ভালো করে ভেবে দেখো, তুমি এটা ভেবে বার করতে পারবে। মেমরি এবং করেসপন্ডিং আগের যে যখন তুমি অঙ্ক করছিলে, তখন সেইটার মেমরি এবং তার মেমরি ট্রেসটাকে কাজে লাগিয়ে তুমি যখন সলিউশনে যাচ্ছ, শুধু সেইটুকুই কিন্তু কাজে লাগছে না, তোমার রেশনাল ফ্যাকাল্টি কাজে লাগছে।
Yes, yes,
নতুন রিলেশন গুলোকে তুমি দেখতে পাচ্ছ, তবে তুমি সলিউশনে পৌঁছচ্ছ।
yes,
সুতরাং
yes.
সলিউশনে পৌঁছতে গেলে মেমরি তোমাকে হেল্প করেছে, কিন্তু এটা সম্পূর্ণ মেমরিটা নয়।
Okay.
আরো আরো রেশনাল কানেকশন, তুমি লজিক্যাল কানেকশন, ম্যাথমেটিক্যাল কানেকশনটা তুমি অ্যাড করে তবে তুমি ফাইনাল রেজাল্টে পৌঁছলে। মেমরি কিন্তু তোমাকে হেল্প করলো, মেমরি ট্রেস তোমাকে হেল্প করলো, কিন্তু নতুন কগনিশনটা মেমরি কগনিশন নয়।
Okay, okay, okay. Got it, sir.
যেমন কিনা আমরা যখন অনুমান করি, তখন ব্যাপ্তি স্মরণটা করি বটে, কিন্তু ব্যাপ্তি স্মরণের সাহায্যে আমি হেতু সাধ্য পক্ষ এদের মধ্যে যে নতুন কানেকশনটা আমি অনুমিতিতে ডিরাইভ করি, দ্যাট ইজ সামথিং নিউ হুইচ ওয়াজ নট প্রেজেন্ট ইন দ্য ব্যাপ্তি স্মরণ ইটসেলফ।
Yes, yes, yes.
আমরা
Yes,
এগোই।
yes, 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 yes. Got it, sir. Got it. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
ওয়েলকাম।
Anyone else?
Ma'am, I have a question, but
Go ahead, go ahead,
প্লিজ
go ahead. কটা বাজে এখন? এখন
yeah,
দুটো
yeah,
বাজে।
দুটো বাজে, সেই জন্যই জিজ্ঞাসা করছিলাম যে
No, no, I'm just telling everyone else because we have a very short lunch break between 2 and 2:30. So all the other participants, you can, log out and go and have your lunch.
yes.
Since we are the organizers, we are taking the liberty of having a small chat uh, in the lunch time. So Indadul, you can ask the question, but you also have to have your lunch.
Yes, yes.
I can see that Professor Chattopadhyay has already logged in. মধুমিতাদি ওদের আধ ঘন্টা লাঞ্চ ব্রেক আছে, তো চলে গেছে, ঠিক আছে।
Oh, yeah, yes, she left. Yes, sir. If memory could
তো
be
অন্যরা কিন্তু যেতে পারো, তোমরা গিয়ে চট করে খেয়ে এসো। হ্যাঁ, বলো।
Sir, if memory could be defined in terms of past time, then the first time, I mean, the contextual past time will be the mood of presentation of memory, and what is delimited by the limiter of the contextual past time.
Past.
Yes. Then could it not be Prama or true cognition? I mean the Smṛti.
দেখো আহ,
Seeing the past as the past.
Yes.
হ্যাঁ অ্যাকচুয়ালি তাই তো, আমি তো সেটাই কিছুটা বললাম যে
হ্যাঁ
মেমোরিতে তো পাস্ট টাইমটা ক্লেমই করা হচ্ছে যে অবজেক্টটা পাস্ট টাইমের, এবং যদি সেই ফ্যাক্টটাই রিপ্রেজেন্টেড হয় তাহলে আমি মিসরিপ্রেজেন্টেশনটার পসিবিলিটি তো থাকলো না। আমি তো শেষের দিকে এই কথাটাই বললাম।
হ্যাঁ সেখানে কোনো মিস ইন্টারপ্রিটেশনও হচ্ছে না ফ্যাক্টের সঙ্গে আমার স্টেটমেন্টের।
হ্যাঁ
তাহলে
তাহলে তো প্রমাই হলো।
প্রমাই
হ্যাঁ
হলো।
হ্যাঁ
কিন্তু
না, আমি একদম কনক্লুশন কিছু টানতে চাই না, আমি ডিবেটটা আছে শুধু এটা প্রেজেন্ট করলাম, প্রস অ্যান্ড কনস বললাম, নাও ইউ ডিসাইড হুইচ সাইড ইউ উড লাইক টু টেক, দ্যাটস ইয়োর অরিজিনালিটি।
না, এটা একটা আলোচনার দিক হতেই পারে।
হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ
ভক্তি বেদান্তীরা, বিশেষ করে ভক্তি বেদান্তীরা, তারা কিন্তু স্মৃতিকে একটা খুব বেশি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ একটা কগনিটিভ ফ্যাকাল্টি বলে মনে করেন। অন্যান্যরা হয়তো সেটাকে একটু ওই যে প্রকৃষ্ট মান না বললে তো আমি ইনডিরেক্টলি সেটাকে নিকৃষ্টই বললাম, কিন্তু ভক্তি বেদান্তীরা স্মৃতিকে একটা খুব উচ্চ স্থান দেন, এবং সেজন্যই আমি মানে বেঙ্কটনাথ, জয়তীর্থ, মধ্বাচার্য, আমি যাদের নাম বললাম, তারা কিন্তু প্রত্যেকে, তার কারণ হচ্ছে এইটা যে স্মৃতিটা মানে ভক্তি সাধনার ক্ষেত্রেও কিন্তু একটা খুব মানে খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট একটা এলিমেন্ট। স্মৃতিটাও কিন্তু ওদের একটা খুব বড় এলিমেন্ট। স্মৃতি না থাকলে কিন্তু মানে মানে সাধনেও মানে বিঘ্ন ঘটে। তো ধ্রুবা স্মৃতির কথা তো আমরা পড়েইছি। হ্যাঁ, তো এই স্মৃতির সেই জন্যে মানে আমাদের মানে মানে আমার বক্তব্যের মূল এটাই ছিল এই যে স্মৃতিকে তার এপিস্টেমিক ক্রেডিটটা দিতে হবে, তার রাইটফুল প্লেসটা এপিস্টেমোলজিতে স্মৃতিকে কিন্তু দিতে হবে। আমরা যে আর্গুমেন্টগুলো দিয়ে স্মৃতিকে অপ্রমা বলার চেষ্টা করছি, অনেক ক্ষেত্রেই আমরা সেখানে কিছু কিছু লুপহোল পাচ্ছি। হতেই পারে এগুলোকে আবার রিফিউট করে স্মৃতি অপ্রমা এটা কেউ প্রমাণ করতেই পারেন। তো আমি সেই জন্য ওপেন রাখছি এই ডিসকাশনটা।
হ্যাঁ, আমার মনে হচ্ছে যে ইন্দাদুল যেটা করতে চাইছে, ও ফিলসফি অফ ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজের দিক থেকে ধরার চেষ্টা করছে।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ
আচ্ছা,
হ্যাঁ, যে ফিলসফি অফ ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজে তো আমরা পাস্ট স্টেটমেন্টের কি বলবো, সিম্যান্টিক্সটা কি হবে।
হ্যাঁ, যেমন
Right.
মাইকেল ডামেটের ওই বইটা।
মাইকেল ডামেট, রাইট, আমি বুঝতে পেরেছি ব্যাপারটা।
আচ্ছা, আচ্ছা।
তো সেইখানে যদি আমরা সত্যি একটা কাইন্ড অফ রিয়েলিস্ট থিওরি অফ পাস্ট করি, এবং if memory is a kind of storage of all these past statements in the past, right? এই হয়েছিল, ওই হয়েছিল, ইত্যাদি ইত্যাদি, তাহলে সেখানে সেই ব্যাপারেও তো একটা আমরা বলতে পারি যে হ্যাঁ, এটা একটা প্রমাণ।
ঠিক,
এইটা হচ্ছে কথা। এখন সেখানে প্রমাণটা কি, প্রমাণের
হ্যাঁ।
প্রমা হলো, তো প্রমাণটা কি,
কি হবে?
সেইখানে একজন কেউ ভেরিফিকেশনিস্ট
না।
হতে পারে।
হ্যাঁ, আসলে ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে ইন্ডিয়ান ফিলসফিতে যেভাবে এই এপিস্টেমোলজি মানে এই ডিসকাশনটা করা হয়, সেখানে প্রমার এবং প্রমাণের একটা ক্লিয়ার টেকনিক্যাল একটা মিনিং আছে, সেই অনুযায়ী আস্তে আস্তে লজিক্যালি ব্যাপারটা এগোনো হয়। যে প্রমাকরণটাই প্রমা,
আমার আরো
এখানে
একটা
সংস্কার মাত্র জন্য, তাহলে সংস্কারটা হবে এখানে প্রমাণ,
প্রমাণ,
প্রমাণটা হবে
প্রমাণ,
সংস্কার,
হ্যাঁ।
প্রমাণ হবে সংস্কার। হ্যাঁ, এখন এবং এইখানে এই মেমোরিটা একটা কিন্তু অকারেন্ট স্টেট, মানে রিকালেকশনটা মানে স্টোর অফ, ওইটাকে কিন্তু মেমোরি ট্রেস বলা হচ্ছে, ওটা কিন্তু মেমোরি নয়, মানে রিকালেকশন।
it's not a
মেমোরিও বলি না,
store.
আমি মেমোরি বলি ভুল করে ফেলছি,
হ্যাঁ,
ওটা আসলে রিকালেকশন। হ্যাঁ, মানে
ঠিক,
ইন্ডিয়ান
ঠিক,
ফিলসফিতে ওটা রিকালেকশন,
recollect,
অকারেন্ট মেন্টাল স্টেট, যেটা একটা
State.
উৎপন্ন হলো একটা পার্টিকুলার পয়েন্ট অফ টাইমে, যার কারণ হলো মেমোরি ট্রেস। আমার যেটা স্টোরড হয়ে রয়েছে সেটা কিন্তু
সেটা memory
recollection নয়, না
সেটা
না,
স্মৃতি নয়,
সেটা স্মৃতি, সেটা স্মৃতি নয়, সেটা
কিন্তু
হলো
স্মৃতির
সংস্কার।
কন্টেন্টটা, স্মৃতির যেটা
হ্যাঁ।
কন্টেন্ট,
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ
সেটা তো একটা পাস্ট টেন্সের একটা ধর প্রপার্টি।
হ্যাঁ,
আমি বললাম, মানে
হ্যাঁ,
if I am allowed to use that term, এবং সেখানে আবার ওই প্রশ্নগুলো উঠতে পারে, সেটাই আমার মনে হচ্ছে ইন্দাদুলের
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ
লাইন আমার
হ্যাঁ,
মনে হচ্ছে।
আসলে
Anyway, it's a good place to talk.
হ্যাঁ
I mean, you can write something. তাই না ইন্দাদুল, you can write.
Yes, yes, yes,
একটা
yes.
লিখেছি আর একটা লিখছি।
হ্যাঁ, আর স্যার তো লিখেইছে। ঠিক
হ্যাঁ,
আছে, থ্যাংক ইউ সো
থ্যাংক
মাচ।
ইউ, থ্যাংক ইউ।
হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে।